The new 14-inch MacBook Pro with an M3 chip in space gray is here, and we've got a lot to talk about. The question is, should you buy it or skip it this time around? Stick around for a full review. Apple has really raised the bar of computing with their custom silicon chips, from M1 to M2 and now M3 chip. Although it's just a refresh, the M3 MacBook Pro 14-inch promises to be the fastest laptop you can take anywhere, with its battery backing it up. Here are the good and bad you should know before buying it in 2023. The 14-inch MacBook Pro starts at $1,599 with the new M3 processor, 8GB of RAM, and 512GB of storage. It's annoying that Apple's base M3 starts so underpowered with just 8GB of RAM. And yes, I will get into why 8GB of unified memory is not enough in this review, so watch till the end for that. The MacBook Pro 14-inch looks the same as its predecessor, but that's a pretty good thing. You get the same super solid squared-off aluminum chassis available in silver and space gray. I do wish Apple offered more color options, such as the midnight blue on the MacBook Air M2. If you wish Apple offered more color options, join me in making our voices heard by subscribing to my channel and liking this video. We are trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Design-wise, there's nothing crazy to talk about. If you're a long-time MacBook follower, you know what to expect. The display is pretty, the touchpad works great, there sure is a notch, but you get used to it, and typing has been enjoyable ever since Apple did away with the butterfly switches a few years ago. The 1080p webcam makes you look like a human and not a potato on calls. It's exactly what I'd want out of a MacBook Pro and includes all the good updates from the last few years. It's still annoying that Apple doesn't let you upgrade individual parts, but at this point, do we expect a difference from Apple? The 14-inch MacBook Pro has an M3 chip which delivers more performance than you might know what to do with. During my everyday use testing for the past week, the M3 MacBook Pro I used barely flinched when I opened every single macOS and iOS app I use regularly in my day-to-day. Then again, the M3 Pro and Max are built for the incredibly demanding needs of those editing loads of 4K film and rendering high-res 3D visuals, as well as those working in medicine, coding and architecture. To try to stress test the 14-inch MacBook Pro, I just opened everything I had on hand. Dozens of tabs in Chrome and Safari alongside a ton of other apps. How many is a ton? Well, to name a few that function perfectly side by side: Discord, Premiere Pro, Messages, Reader, 1Password, Apple Maps, Photos, Notes, Apple's TV app, and Apple News to mention a few. Our benchmarks showed the power of Apple Silicon, which more than doubled the Dell XPS 15's multi-core score on Geekbench 6, a test that gauges overall performance. Even though MacBooks are known for falling short on gaming, the M3 chips have huge power to play games like Resident Evil Village and a select batch of notable games available on Apple Arcade. But for many reasons, the biggest video games and Macs mixed about as well as magnets of opposing polarity. To see how high-profile games are running on the Mac, I booted up Resident Evil Village. Resident Evil Village, which came out years earlier on consoles, ran perfectly at the same resolution on the 16-inch MacBook Pro. Over on the M3-based 14-inch MacBook Pro, however, Carlack's waking moments suffered from low performance when I tried to play with the same Ultra HD settings. Once I shifted to 1080p, play smoothed out at the lower resolution. But it's as important as any title in Apple's ongoing quest to make gaming on the Mac a caveat-free conversation. This is just the beginning for AAA quality Mac game, with the Resident Evil 4 remake and the new release Assassin's Creed Mirage coming soon. But the question of will people game on the Mac still lingers. But how does this performance translate to battery life on the MacBook Pro with the M3 chip? MacBook Pros are known for their long batteries dating back to Apple's attempt at the M1 MacBook Pro in 2020. Well, the 14-inch MacBook Pro with an M3 chip doesn't disappoint. Apple says it lasts 22 hours of heavy use. During our looping 4K video battery test, the M3 MacBook Pro came in at around 10 hours, give or take, beating their M2 series brethren by up to 4 hours. Both outlasted the Dell XPS 15 by at least an hour and 25 minutes. What changed? Well, the M3 is Apple's and the world's first computer chip based on 3nm technology, which is meant to improve efficiency. Overall, you won't be disappointed with the battery life of the 14-inch MacBook Pro. But while I enjoyed using the 14-inch Pro overall, there was one thing that really irked me: the ports. Picking the M3 14-inch MacBook Pro means losing a Thunderbolt port. Since the move to Apple Silicon, the MacBook Pro has generally had 3 Thunderbolt ports, a headphone jack, a MagSafe 3 port, an SD card slot, and an HDMI port. The base model 14-inch Pro with M3 processor only has 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports. That third port, and Thunderbolt 4, are reserved for the M3 Pro and M3 Max models. On the one hand, this is still a step up from the now discontinued 13-inch and both Air models, all of which only have 2 Thunderbolt ports, a headphone jack, and nothing else. On the other hand, why? Why is Apple gatekeeping that third Thunderbolt port to the M3 Pro and M3 Max? You could argue that's because the M3 chip only supports a single external display, while the M3 Pro and Max chips support 2. As much as I love the MacBook Pro, even I have to admit, it's just expensive. Yes, the $1,299 15-inch MacBook Air exists for those with everyday needs. But if you want a big screen laptop and want things like faster performance or more robust ports, you're spending almost twice as much to get the 16-inch MacBook Pro, which starts at $2,499. That's unless you're okay with the smaller screen of the 14-inch model, which begins at a more reasonable but still pricey $1,599. If you think that's absurd, the pricing is even more questionable when you consider that Apple defaults the M3 MacBook Pro to only have 8GB of RAM. For those of us who hoard Chrome tabs uncontrollably, we look at the Dell XPS 15, which starts with 16GB of RAM, and think, why doesn't Apple fill our memory sockets the way Dell does? The new M3 MacBook Pros are fantastic powerhouse laptops that are already making previous gen owners envious and considering upgrades. While overall performance is the big story here, I am impressed by the ever-improving state of gaming on the Mac. We're not at the endgame yet, but we're further along than I ever expected.